The price of belonging. The early morning sun peeked over the hills surrounding Oba town, casting its golden rays on the tall gates of Anglican Girls Oba, a prestigious boarding school known for its academic excellence and the social cliques that ruled its halls. A mix of chatter, laughter, and the occasional sharp whistle of the matron filled the air as students, old and new, arrived for the new term. Among the crowd stood Chisimdi, clutching a small worn suitcase in one hand and a tightly folded acceptance letter in the other. For a girl from a modest home in Omodike village, Chisimdi's admission to Anglican Girls Oba was nothing short of a miracle. The scholarship she had won, sponsored by a local foundation, covered her tuition and boarding fees, but little else. Her parents, though immensely proud, could barely afford the personal items required for her stay. Still, Chisimdi's heart brimmed with determination. She promised herself that she would make her parents proud and seize every opportunity to excel. Her wide, curious eyes darted around the sprawling campus, and she followed the matron's instruction to the dormitory. The compound was pristine, lined with neatly trimmed hedges and shaded by tall palm trees. The main school building, a towering structure of cream-colored bricks, stood at the heart of the compound, exuding an air of authority. Chisimdi noticed group of girls, mostly in their mid-teens, walking arm in arm, their uniforms immaculate, and their laughter echoing through the open space. Fresh meat, a girl whispered loudly as Chisimdi passed, her tone dripping with mockery. Chisimdi's cheeks flushed, but she kept her head high, pretending not to hear. She had heard stories about the hierarchy of Anglican Girls Oba, how the wealthy students, often daughters of politicians, business moguls, and other influential figures, ruled the school. To these girls, scholarship students like Chisimdi were outsiders, objects of ridicule. Still, she held on to her resolve. I am here to learn, not to impress anyone, she whispered to herself. The dormitory was a long rectangular building with rows of bunk beds neatly arranged. Chisimdi found her assigned bed near the window where her new roommate, Amaka, was already unpacking. Amaka, a petite girl with braided hair and a warm smile, greeted her cheerfully. Hi, you must be Chisimdi, she said, extending a hand. I am Amaka. I heard we are both scholarship students. Chisimdi nodded, relieved to meet someone who might understand her struggles. Yes, that's me. It's nice to meet you. The two girls quickly bonded over their shared background and modest goals. Amaka, whose father was a retired teacher, was equally determined to excel. Together, they unpacked their belongings, carefully folding their second-hand uniforms and arranging their toiletries on the small shelf provided. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the dormitory bustled with activity. Older students trotted around confidently, issuing instructions to the younger ones. Among them were the three queens, Faith, Grace, and Diana. These girls were the embodiment of everything Anglican Girls Oba represented in terms of status and power. They were beautiful, stylish, and always surrounded by admirers. Faith, the leader, was the daughter of a prominent politician. Grace's father was a billionaire businessman, while Diana's family owned a chain of luxury hotels. Together, they formed an unshakable clique, setting trends and commanding the respect and fear of the other students. As Faith walked past Chisimdi and Amaka's corner, she paused, her sharp eyes scanning the two girls. Oh, look at these charity cases, she sneered. What's that smell? Poverty? Her companions burst into laughter. Chisimdi felt her face burned with humiliation, but she refused to respond. Amaka, however, clenched her fist, muttering under her breath, Ignore them, they are not worth it. Later that night, Chisimdi lay awake on her thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, The taunts from the queens echoed in her mind, mingling with memories of her parents' word before she left for school. Her mother knelt beside her bedside, holding her hands tightly. Chisimdi, remember who you are, she had said. Focus on your studies, avoid bad friends. We may not have much, but you have a bright future ahead of you. Her father's voice had been equally firm. Respect yourself and the values we've taught you. That is the only way you will succeed in a place like this. Determined not to let anyone or anything distract her, Chisimdi resolved to pour all her energy into her academics. I will make them proud, she whispered, closing her eyes. The next morning brought the first day of classes. Chisimdi and Amaka navigated their way through the sprawling campus, clutching their timetables. The classrooms were large and well equipped, a stark contrast to the dilapidated school buildings back in their village. Chisimdi was awestruck by the rows of computers in the lab and the neatly stacked books in the library. During the first lesson, the teacher, Mrs. Nneka, asked the students to introduce themselves. When it was Chisimdi's turn, she stood up nervously, aware of the curious eyes fixed on her. My name is Chisimdi Okafu, she began, her voice trembling slightly. I am from Umudike village and I am here on a scholarship. I hope to study hard and achieve great things. Faith's snicker from the back row was audible, but Chisimdi ignored it, focusing on the encouraging notes from the teacher and a few other students. As the lesson progressed, she immersed herself in the subject, determined to prove herself. At lunchtime, Chisimdi and Amaka sat together under a large mango tree, unpacking their simple meals of rice and stew wrapped in foil. Nearby, the queen sat on a blanket spread over the grass, surrounded by an array of snacks and drinks that looked like they had come straight from a supermarket aisle. Their loud laughter and flamboyant gestures drew everyone's attention. Look at them, Amaka whispered. They act like they own the school. Chisimdi glanced at them briefly before turning back to her food. Let them enjoy their moments. We have more important things to focus on. As the weeks passed, Chisimdi began to settle into her routine. She excelled in her classes, often earning the praise of her teachers. However, the divide between her and the queens remained palpable. They continued to mock her and Amaka, but Chisimdi learned to brush off their comments. Unbeknownst to her, Faith had taken an interest in her, not out of admiration, but as a challenge. Let's see how long she can keep up that goody two-shoes act, Faith told Grace and Diana one afternoon. Sooner or later, everyone wants to belong. For now, though, Chisimdi remained steadfast, unaware of the temptations and trials that lay ahead. The next week began with a renewed sense of purpose for Chisimdi and Amaka. The morning bell rang sharply across the Anglican Girls' Oba campus, signaling the start of classes. The two friends walked side by side, their arms filled with textbooks, as they headed to the library to review their assignments before class. The hustle and bustle of other students faded into the background as Chisimdi focused on her goal, to excel academically and make her family proud. Meanwhile, in a far corner of the school courtyard, the queens of Oba held court. Faith, Grace, and Diana sat on a polished wooden bench under a flowering tree, their expensive perfumes wafting through the air. They were surrounded by an entourage of admirers, girls eager to gain their favor or simply bask in their radiance. Faith, the leader, was strikingly beautiful, with a commanding presence that made heads turn wherever she went. Grace was soft-spoken, but just as intimidating, with a sharp wit and an uncanny ability to manipulate others. Diana, the youngest of the three, often played the role of the wild card, unpredictable, but fiercely loyal to her friends. The queens were not just admired, they were feared. Their wealth and family connections gave them power over everyone else at Anglican Girls Oba. Often turned a blind eye to their escapades, knowing their influential parents could cause trouble for the school. As Chisimdi and Amaka walked past the Queen's gathering, they heard the unmistakable sound of laughter. Faith's voice rang out, loud and mocking. Look, the scholarship girls are here, she said, nudging Grace, carrying their lives in their hands as usual. Amaka stopped in her tracks, her jaw tightening. Ignore them, Chisimdi, she whispered, clutching her friend's arm. Chisimdi hesitated, but decided to follow Amaka's advice. She kept her gaze fixed ahead, refusing to give the queens the satisfaction of a reaction. The girls' laughter trailed behind them, but Chisimdi forced herself to focus on the day's tasks. In the classroom, however, the queen's influence were impossible to ignore. They arrived late as usual, walking in like they owned the place. Faith's bold earrings jingled as she swayed to her seat, and Grace casually placed her designer bag on the desk beside her. The teacher paused mid-sentence, clearly annoyed, but said nothing. Now, where were we? Mrs. Necker resumed, glancing at the chalkboard. Ah, yes, quadratic equation. Cindy, seated near the front of the room, was deeply engrossed in the lesson. She loved the mathematics and often found solace in solving equations. Her mind temporarily free from the complexities of school life. She was so focused that she didn't notice Faith whispering to Grace behind her. Watch this, Faith murmured with a smirk. She crumpled a piece of paper and tossed it at Chisimdi's desk, landed squarely on her open notebook. Chisimdi froze. Slowly, she turned around to face Faith, who grinned back at her unapologetically. Oops, Faith said, feigning innocence. Did that distract you, Miss Genius? The class erupted in laughter. Mrs. Necker frowned but didn't intervene, clearly hesitant to confront the queens. Chisimdi clenched her face under the decks, swallowing the lump in her throat. She wanted to snap back, to put Faith in her place, but she knew it would only make things worse. Instead, she quietly brushed the paper aside and refocused on the lesson. Amaka shot her a sympathetic glance, but Chisimdi refused to let the humiliation affect her. Stay strong, she told herself. This is just a distraction. At lunchtime, the queens took their usual spot on the lawn, lounging on a colorful picnic blanket. They were surrounded by a feast of imported snacks, fizzle drinks, and exotic fruits that made other students' plain meals look pitiful in comparison. Faith picked up a red bright apple, turning it in her hand as she spoke. You know, she said, addressing her friends, but speaking loudly enough for others to hear. Not everyone belongs here. Some people are just out of place. Grace giggled. You mean the charity cases? Diana leaned back, her sunglasses reflecting the sunlight. Exactly. It's like they don't even try to fit in. Nearby, Chisimdi and Amaka sat under a mango tree, sharing a small container of rice and beans. They could hear every word, but pretended not to. They'll get tired eventually, Amaka said, her tone laced with frustration. People like them always need someone to look down on. Chisimdi nodded, though her appetite was gone. Let them say what they want. We will show them what really matters. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the dormitory buzzed with activity. Students prepared for the next day, some revising their notes, others gossiping about the latest school drama. In their corner, Chisimdi and Amaka discussed their upcoming assignments, determined to stay ahead. Did you see the way Mrs. Neka looked at your notebook today? Amaka said with a grin. She was impressed. Chisimdi blushed. It's just maths. It's not a big deal. It's a big deal, Amaka insisted. You're one of the smartest girls here, and they know it. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of a laughter across the room. The queens had gathered in their luxurious corner, which was decorated with fairy lights, silk cushions, and framed photos of their glamorous lives outside school. Are you serious, Diana? Faith exclaimed, her voice carrying across the dormitory. You mean she actually wore those shoes to the salon? Grace burst out laughing. I can't. That's tragic. Their voices grated on Chisimdi's nerves, but she tried to block them out. Focus, she reminded herself. That is why you are here. Little did she know the queens were not done with her yet. Faith had noticed Chisimdi's quiet resilience and saw it as a challenge. To her, breaking the scholarship girl's spirit would be a fun game. Let's see how long you can stay on your high horse, Chisimdi. Faith muttered under her breath, a sly smile playing on her lips.
Hope you enjoyed the tale. If so, please like the video, comment, share it with your family and friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell for more enchanting tales like this one. Goodbye.